All right, again, good morning, everybody. It's Christian. We're going to talk about our autophagy panel, and like I just stated, this is probably my favorite test. It tests about 11 SNPs, and we'll go over that, but everything starts at the cellular level. So this test is going to be a great test for you when you hand them the flyer, the brochure, and they're looking at it and they're like, yeah, I have something from this category, or I have something from that category. And so they're sitting there like, I know I want to do some testing, but I just don't know what it is that I want to do. So, for example, I'm going to slide this over so you can just look at it real quick. So we go into our website here in the nutrigenomic panels section, and you'll see, look at all these. You know, it can be very overwhelming, and I've been asked to put more detail on all these things, but this would be about a 150-page thing. So this autophagy panel is very exciting. And so, like I said before, if I could only pick one test for somebody, this would be the one that I would pick. So somebody says, yeah, I've got some pain, you know, I had an accident, or, yeah, I'm concerned about how my body's processing my vitamins and minerals, or, yeah, you know, for guys, you know, guy issues, I got high blood pressure, women's issues, I got this, I got that, all these things, okay? Even the cannabis test, there's a little bit of stuff in there with that. So if I had to pick one test, if somebody says, yeah, I got this or that, I would definitely go with the autophagy test, and I'll show you why here as we get started. So who needs a panel? So pretty much, hold on, it looks like we have an issue on the call-in line. Let's see. Sorry for the technical difficulty. Okay. All right. So can everybody hear me okay? Because I got somebody that said they can't call in. Is everybody?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. All right.
I can hear you.
All good.
Okay, great. All right, here we go again. All right, pardon that technical difficulty. It's going to screw up my awesome recording, but that's okay. So who needs a panel? All right, so autoimmune issue people. This is lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. I spelled that wrong. Sjorgen's. Okay, and does anybody know what Sjorgen's is? That's something that usually accompanies other immune disorders. So it could be as mild as dry eyes, but it could be as serious as chronic pain, fatigue, that kind of thing. It's usually an accompanying autoimmune disease. People with hearing loss, detox problems, irritable bowel syndrome, any neurological diseases at all, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, personal or family history, multiple sclerosis, autism, developmental delays. And this is a biggie, personal or family history of cancer, guys. This would be our equivalent to our CGX. It just doesn't focus as much on that. But when we get into how this thing works, everything, like I said, starts at the cellular level. People with type 2 diabetes, people with liver, kidney, or pancreas issues. And also, here's the catch-all, everyone over 50 should consider this test for any types of problems they're having at all. Okay. A little note here, this test won the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine in 2016. So this test is essentially hot off the presses as far as medicine goes. This thing is an incredible, incredible test. So we talk about this in the other panels. We kind of build from each presentation, but we probably should have started with this one. Autophagy. What is it? Well, here's a long definition, but basically what it is it's the natural way that our body gets rid of the garbage in our cells and recycles things, like proteins and things. It also helps with getting rid of bacteria, all right, in our intestines and everywhere else in our gut. Autophagy really has its most profound effects on the high energy cells, like our nervous system, our immune system, and our endocrine system. Autophagy is affected, and here's where it gets a little complicated. Here we go. It's affected by our mTOR. Now, our mTOR Usually I put definitions with these acronyms, but we're not going to do a ton of that today. It's going to go into one ear and out the other. It does for me, so I have a hard time retaining that. But it's basically our speedometer, okay, and our internal clock, our internal speedometer, or the regulator of our cell growth. So when we're younger, all right, we have a faster clock because our body, when we're born, starts to build all these cells and keeps building them and regenerating them and all that kind of thing. So what happens in younger people is that because their clock or speedometer is running so fast, they don't get a lot of proper clearance of this garbage out of their cells. So this can cause problems in the developmental phase, developmental stages. It can it's correlating with autism. All kinds of things can get messed up when your autophagy is out of whack. And so then let's look at what happens as we get older. All right, our speedometer or our clock slows down. Us old people over 50, we start to see these things, these pains, these cancers, the older people typically associated diseases. So in order to speed that back up again, there's some therapies that can be applied and lifestyle changes and that kind of thing, and I'll go over that also. One of the key factors, or key treatments even, is this clock is actually regulated by this one chemical here, rapamycin. It's not just the one chemical, but this is the big hitter right here, rapamycin. So rapamycin production and processing really has a direct effect on our speedometer, or mTOR. So our mTOR, again, remember, is a speedometer or the regulator of our cellular growth. All right. So funny enough, the autophagy panel studies 11 SNPs. That's kind of an untruth. It actually studies about 13 SNPs. We'll go over that, but they call it 11 SNPs because one of the SNPs that we're going to talk about is actually a combination of a couple different ones. It's pretty cool. So funny enough, this autophagy panel covers the autophagy SNPs. And here they are. So the ATG5, 12, 16L1, ATG, usually these things are acronym coded to what it correlates to. So ATG is autophagy. And so these three particular SNPs are associated with type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, PCOS, fatty liver disease, any of those neurological diseases we talked about, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, okay, people that have tremors that have not been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease yet, unexplained movements in their muscles, okay, any neurological issues, autoimmune diseases like lupus and those types of things, and hearing loss. So these genes, or SNPs here of these genes, are a direct correlation between these issues. Now, the NOD2 and CARD15, this is basically two SNPs that are associated with genes that clear the bacterial tract. Okay, so these two work together to handle the bacterial clearance out of our bodies, and so essentially someone with IBS typically has issues with these. Now, Parkin, or PARK2, that's exactly what you think it is. That's the Parkinson's SNP. Okay, so when you have mutations here, that's going to indicate possible early onset of Parkinson's. Now, you'll notice I use words like indicate, could be, because no one is going to, in their right mind, say out loud that if you have a mutation in this PARK2 gene, you will have an early onset of Parkinson's. Even though they know it's going to happen, they'll never tell someone that. No one ever will, especially us. Okay, so, and that's why this next one here, this is going to be the perfect example of why people need to have doctors help them interpret these reports for the fear factor, get rid of that, and because some of this stuff is pretty scary, man. And so here we go, the APOE, they call it the APOE. This one here is the Alzheimer's and dementia SNP here, all right? Now remember I told you we looked at 11 SNPs, but actually it's like 13. The reason being is because this APOE is actually a combination of this E2, E3, and E4. Just think of it as a sub-SNP. It's not what it's really called, but it's these three mutations that they look at here have actual separate labels. These all comprise the ApoE. All right, now this is a very scary SNP. I'll tell you why. Because remember we talked about heterozygous and homozygous. If someone has a homozygous E4 in their ApoE, this is, man, I'm telling you, these people are seriously at risk of dementia, and if they ever get hurt in a sporting injury, post-concussion syndrome and macular degeneration. This E4 is a scary, scary allele here. Scary. Now, this is an error. Ignore that. So basically those are the SNPs that we're going to look at. Let's go right into the report because it's a short report, but again, I think it's the most important test that we run. So I absolutely would say to you that I would forbid you to go over any of these reports with people, especially this one. I don't even want you to show people samples of this stuff unless it's a healthcare provider, someone that's actually in the field. Any of these panels, we're not going to interpret it for them. So up here in the report here, first section is the only section that's the autophagy-associated SNPs. We went over all what these were except for the Smurf one here. The treatments, when they have mutations on these genes, are going to be done different ways. They're going to look at some medications, obviously. Now, with autophagy, we talked about the speedometer being the mTOR being a key factor here. So they're going to focus on regulating that metabolism and that speedometer, and the way they're going to do that is pharmaceutically they'll prescribe like rapamycin, metformin, and a whole bunch of other ones, including some growth hormones for people that are younger or older. They'll even give them some growth hormones to try to speed that up. They're going to also as far as supplements go, there's a ton of supplements that they'll actually recommend, combinations of supplements, even caffeine, okay? They'll even say you need to drink a bunch of caffeine or coffee or whatever to get that caffeine in your system to help regulate that. And just a bunch of others. Now, some of the lifestyle recommendations that you can see here are the calorie restriction, again, fasting. There's a lot of belief that fasting is science has proven that if you fast 12 to 18 hours at a time, you can kind of get your body back in balance. Exercise, and then a bunch of antioxidants they might issue or request for you to take those. Vitamin C is another good one. So you can see here, when they get this report, it's going to be one page of SNPs and then a summary. Now, it's funny that probably one of the most important panels that we could offer somebody has the shortest report. But this is probably the most serious one of the bunch that we have to offer, especially since it's looking at those cancers. It'll give them a gene key and some definitions. So they can also, here's a Smurf one. You can see how it's, if somebody reads this, the SMRF1 protein is a negative regulator of pathways involved in cell polarity growth and differentiation. Normal function of the SMRF1 protein is required for normal development and innate immune function. So this is why the doctors should see these reports. Okay, it's a short presentation on the autophagy panel, but now I'm going to open it up to questions because I think it's the most important test that we offer.